Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome, my friends. My name is Vincenzo, and welcome to my channel, Fountain Pen Therapy. Yes, it's a autumn morning, Sunday morning. I'm having my cappuccino, and I'm having an absolute ball doing this comprehensive nib review. I mean, the title is a little pretentious, but I think we're having some fun here, folks. We're sharing some ideas. Hopefully it'll inspire you. It'll inspire some debate, lots of debate. I see that in the comments. All well accepted, because you know what? Nibs, unfortunately, apart from just a few aspects, very, very little science there. Sometimes it's hit and miss, depending on where we get the nibs and how we ink them and what paper we use, etc., etc., etc. I've gone to two parts, and those two parts dealt with some very heavy subjects. This one is a little more lighthearted, I think, and some of it also may be more directed at beginners rather than, some of you who are experts or long-time collectors, long-time enthusiasts. But having said that, I think there's some subjects that are worthy of mention, and I'd like to weigh in on them. So what three subjects are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to cover the most underrated nibs, and as an accessory to that, we're going to have to deal with what are the most overrated nibs, best starter nibs, and what about the best number 5 nibs. So there you have it. So folks, without any further ado, part 3 of Fountain Pen Therapy's nib review, Demystified. Jose, we're back for the first chapter of this part 3, which is going to deal with the title of the chapter is the most underrated and I guess the most overrated nibs in my view, based on the inventory of nibs that I have. And the focus is really going to be on the most underrated, and then I will end with give you my point of view as to what I believe are the most overrated nibs. Having said that, here is my list of the most underrated nibs. Well, I think number 1 on the list is, generally speaking, Chinese nibs I think are the most underrated nibs on the market. Some of us don't realize how good these nibs are and how good these nibs have become and how good these nibs are becoming, because they're constantly evolving. And 2024 saw some great nibs appearing. And I hope that this trend where Asvine is combining, choices with Bach nibs and the Yowo nibs, or Admoc gives you the pen with a Schmidt nib. I hope that's not going to be an ongoing trend. I prefer that they innovate, and I prefer that they give me their own nibs, because let me tell you, so far they've done a really good job. Now, when we talk about Chinese nibs, I think the leader of the gang, because until then, I would say to you that that Jinao nibs were pretty ordinary. The Moon Man nibs were pretty ordinary, but Pen BBS came on the scene, and let me tell you, Pen BBS kind of pushed everybody to just give more. And let me give you an example of probably the original underrated nibs, in my view, the Pen BBS nibs. And I'm going to give you a sampling. There are, of course, more, but here they are. So here are the Pen BBS nibs. And of course, I draw your attention to the first three, which are really the original. They came in either chrome or dual toned or gold. Those were the original, but nice tipping. And of course, those were replaced. Further down the line, they came out with a medium nib, which is the last one, Pen BBS right here, with a nice tipping, and that medium all of a sudden took hold. And, you know, there's all kinds of other specialty nibs, including calligraphy nibs. You see one example here, which is kind of a, you could see there's kind of an architect grind. So they got all kinds of special grinds there that are really, really interesting. And you could see the tipping there is just fabulous. So, and there's now even more out. Mind you, they're charging at a premium. So there you have it. That's the Pen BBS. And those Pen BBS nibs can be purchased, and they came, sorry, the camera is not focusing here, but they came in this kind of little plastic tubing. Let me just put it down and move the camera so that you could see it. Yeah, kind of a plastic tubing, really, really fun, where the nibs came nice and protected in there, and you could purchase them with that covering, if you will, or with that little, which is a nice touch. So there you have it, the Pen BBS nibs. Now, of course, if you're going to talk about Chinese pens, apart from Pen BBS, as I say, in my opinion, they kind of were the leaders, and it's just too bad they haven't been around for some time. And if you're going to talk about Chinese nibs, then you've got to weigh in on Jinao, Asvine, Ongdian, Manzhong, Winsung, etc. And let's take a look at a few of those nibs, and I'll show you why I believe they're extremely underrated and they're quality nibs. So without further ado, we'll go to my camera and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here you're seeing, in fact, probably what I would say probably the best nibs from all of the Chinese nibs, which are the Asvine nibs. And you can see here, you know, I've given you 4 examples. They have, you know, you can buy them in fine or in medium. I believe there may also be extra fine. Extra fine is just not my cup of tea, so to speak. But as you can see, you have the Asvine fine. You can get them in the gold plated or in the chrome. And then, of course, you've got this juicy medium nibs, which I think are really, really, really nice. So there you have Asvine. Now, the next on my list, I believe, is Ongdian. And take a look at this. I mean, you've got, you know, the original nibs, which are kind of, you can get fine, you can get extra fine, you can get medium. These are number 6 nibs. Then you get these beautiful number 8 nibs in both chrome and kind of a darker grayish matte finish in fine and medium. Then you've got these specialized Ear of the Rabbit nibs, which are really juicy. You've got, those are the original 1997 Ongdian nibs with fine tips. And then you got this special Year of the Dragon nib, just to give you a sampling of what Ongdian has been able to do. And these are just absolutely fabulous nibs. Well, next on my list is Manzhong. Now, I have spared you the old Moonman nibs because I think they weren't up to par, but these fine, medium, and they even have a 1.1 stub are really, really fine nibs. And then, of course, they've just come out with this number 8, bouncy number 8 medium nib in this case. Very nice nibs, I got to tell you. So that's Manzhong, or Moonman Manzhong. Okay, next on my list is Winsung. Less variety, I would say to you, but nonetheless, I think worthy of mention. You've got some of the original Winsung, which were not very, very good, but now you've got the most recent number 6 nibs, which are really nice. And then, of course, you've got the 2 number 8 nibs here, both in fine and medium, which are just fabulous. So there you have, that's Wing Sung, another really nice contender and underrated. Adding to the list, I think, and deservedly so, are some of these lemon nibs. I mean, despite the awful brand name, lemon, and, you know, what's unfortunate, you don't see apart from this one, you don't really see the size, but lemon has all kinds of nibs. They have, you know, special grinds, architect grinds, they have fine, they have medium, and so I think worthy of mention, that's another underrated Chinese nib maker, and that's lemon. Now, next on my list is Jinhao, and I think they've got quite a bit of variety here, and it's really nice to see. I've got a sampling here. First of all, you've got the original nib. This is the original nib. Then you've got these heartbeat number 6 size nibs in fine and medium. You've got number 5 size nib, and then you've got this specialized small nib that is kind of a Lamy Safari type of a nib, if you will. Sorry about the focusing, not the greatest. Let me just see if I could influence it. There you go. I think you can see that a little better. Yeah, so we've got the original, then the 2 heartbeat, number 6. You've got the number 5 nib, and you've got the specialized nib. Here you've got all my number 8 size nibs. They go from extra fine to medium, and you even have heartbeat here in medium, and I think they have it in fine. And this is the most recent offering, which is, you know, another decoration. So Jinhao, quite complex, quite deliberate, and really, really nice nibs. There you have it. Actually, one thing I wanted to add, in when we take all of them, all these Chinese nibs, I'm going to declare one winner in terms of the most underrated nibs, and that would be Yowo. The reason why I choose Yowo as the most underrated is because of, one, you get the variety. They're going from number 5 right up to that number 8. And the prices are just unbeatable. Unbeatable for the quality of nibs that you're getting. So that would be my most underrated of all of them. Second most underrated would be Asvine. If you're looking at quality, the Asvine nib is really up there. And the third, in my view, is Kegalu. And if you will, we'll do some writing samples to show you why I believe these 3 are, at the end of the day, my most underrated nibs. Stay tuned. So I thought we would have some fun with some writing samples just to demonstrate to you why I believe these nibs are underrated. So let's go to my overhead camera and we'll take just a sampling here of what I mean. First of all, the inks that I'm using, various inks. If I remember which ink is in the pen, I will let you know. Some of them I've inked, especially for this video, and some were already inked, if you will. And the paper is Tomo River. It's my old Abonichi that you see in front of you, that it's got some leftover pages that I'm going to use up. So the first contender is this Jinhao number 5 nib on this 82. Now, you should know that these nibs are, in fact, these number 5 nibs are, in fact, the original number 5, stiff as a nail, as they used to say. So, these are probably the least performing nibs of the gang. So, this one is Jinhao, number 5, steel, fine nib, and as you can see, it does give you a nice line. My only criticism of this particular nib as I mentioned, it's from the old, let me just, here we go, from the old batches, and it's very stiff, so the writing experience is not the best. But the quality of the line is wet and consistent. The next one on the line that I'd like to show you is some of the more modern nibs from Jinhao, and this is the number 6 heartbeat. Number 6, not the number 8. So this is the Jinhao number 6 steel heartbeat. And right away, let me just cap this pen. Yeah. Right away you can sense the difference. In these new nibs, oh, let me tell you, this is a medium. Medium, I should mention it here. Very, very nice. So it's got a little more bounce, which the original nibs didn't have, and just makes the writing experience all that much better. Which leads me to then look at their number 8 nib, and I've chosen one of them, which is this number 8 size medium. So this is the Jinhao, and look how juicy this is. Sorry, number 8 steel medium. And it's not even the heartbeat, folks. It's just the standard number 8. Just fabulous. I mean, I got to tell you, it writes like my Mont Blanc. It's. I think the new nibs from Jinhao, and the pricing is just fabulous. It's unbeatable, okay, in my view. The next one that I'd like to show you is Asvine. This is the Asvine, and this one I believe, I hope it works, because this one is already inked. This is my Asvine medium nib. So yeah, let's just let it run for a while. Asvine steel number 6 medium. Look at this, folks. I haven't written with this for months, okay? And very nice. In terms of quality, and you know, the Jinhao, sometimes you have to play around with them. They're kind of hit and miss out of the box, but I find these Asvines are the most consistent out of the box. So that's Asvine, and if we're going to talk about Asvine, we should talk about Ongdian, because they're probably, you know, in hindsight, probably along the same lines. This is my Ongdian Year of the Rabbit nib. And it's a medium. Very, very juicy. It's a medium and writes like almost like a broad. And this is kind of my favorite nib from Ongdian, apart from the D5, which has that springy fine nib. It's just a little too fine for me. Now, next on my list is Kegaloo. Kegaloo is probably the best nib, the most underrated nib of all Chinese nibs. So this is the, sorry, that's me, Kegaloo, number 6, steel, medium, but almost broad. Writes like a broad. Let me tell you, look at this. Just incredible. Just incredible. That's a number 6. Then I have a little number 5, which I have on this Jinhao 82 Mini. So that's a little mini number 5 nib. So this is the Kegaloo This one's hard starting. I haven't used it in a while. And you can see some crusty drying up there. But this is a number 5 steel, probably fine nib. So they even have a number 5. Not as good as their number 6. But let me tell you, the number 6 nib from Kegeloo, let me just, I've got to show you this. I mean, this nib, it just performs beautifully right out of the box every time. Look at this. Just juicy, 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 juicy. Look at this. Just so wet. Very nice nib. My favorite nib, my favorite Chinese nib is Kegeloo. In fact, in several of my pens, I've removed the original nib, whatever it may be, and replaced it with a Kegeloo that I've ordered, and you can buy them separately, as a matter of fact. They even have a Kegeloo long blade, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not crazy about those long blade because they're kind of an architect grind, and I just can't get used to those grinds. But so there you have the sampling for the Chinese nibs. Now, next category on my list, I would say are, in terms of underrated nibs, are can-write nibs. I got to tell you, these can-write nibs, it's most unfortunate that the pens themselves are not the greatest quality. Kind of, you know, you could see that they're just not paying attention, which is unfortunate. If they had the quality that Ranga has, that Lotus has, that Vizier has, and many others, I mean, those can-write nibs, and I think they actually provide nibs to other Indian manufacturers, which is very ironic. But if we take a look at some of the can-write nibs, let me put them up on the screen here, just to give you a sampling. As you can see, you can get, you know, double broads, medium, which kind of normal nibs, very smooth writing, and we'll do a writing sample in just a few minutes or seconds. Then you got a more ordinary can-write nib here, and then you got this flex here. This is a flex nib with ebonite feed, which is, you know what, very, very nice. So those are the can-write. And what I propose, let's take a look at some writing samples and see what these nibs can do to show you why I believe they're underrated. Okay, so next on the list are the can-write, and I wanted to show you some sampling of the can-write pens, which are not the greatest quality pens, again, I repeat. But let's start with one of their ordinary nibs. This is it's a double broad, so you can get anything from fine to double broad. So this is the can-write, number 6, steel, and this is double broad. Now, folks, talk about wet and smooth. Ha! I mean, cannot be beat. And the beauty of these nibs is that they're not expensive, so you can swap them, play around with them, experiment, and not have to worry about having spent a fortune on them. That's a regular nib. This one is a flex nib. Now, I haven't written with this in a while, but this is a flex can-write, probably a fine. So this is a number 6 steel flex fine, or fine flex. And the problem with these pens is that they have a tendency to dry up quickly. But if you put that nib in another pen, you know, this is the Kingfisher, probably my favorite can-write pen, just because of its color. This is a broad flex. So they even have flex that varies from fine to broad. So this is, again, Canwright, number 6, steel, broad, flex. Very wet. There you go. Canwright, folks. Very, very nice. Very nice. So those are my Canwright pens, sampling, and I hope they've demonstrated why they're underrated. What I'd like to discuss next is from the mainstream standard nibs, Yowo, Bock, Schmidt. And I think you know by now that I'm getting fed up of Yowo nibs. I'm really looking elsewhere. I've got to tell you, when we look at those three, I think the most underrated standard or mainstream German nib is probably the Schmidt nib. That's my opinion. I think, these days, if I have to choose between Schmidt, Bock, and Yowo, I'm almost tempted to go with the Schmidt because it gives me that kind of variety. It gives me a little more feedback, just a much more interesting writing experience. And let's go to my overhead camera. Let me demonstrate. First of all, these Admoc M800 kind of a Pelican knockoff, if you will, with a Schmidt medium nib. So this is the Schmidt. Take a look at this, folks. Little feedback, thick line, constant, really, really wet. I gotta tell you. Well, now I'm making a mess, but just beautiful. And that's the number 6. And one of the reasons why these little pens, these Scrivener pens, have such a great reputation, in my view, is because of the nib. This is a number 5 medium Schmidt nib on one of these Scrivener pens. Take a look at this. Just an excellent writing experience. And in my view, one of the reasons why this little Scrivener has got such a great reputation. Nice little pen, and I've got a few of these. Very nice, well built, nice design, kind of a mini Kaweco style pen where you unscrew it and screw it in when you post it. Very nice, but again, I think it's due to that Schmidt nib. So there you have it. From those 3, I would go with the Schmidt these days, just to give you that different, underrated writing experience. Now, that leads me to talk about the most overrated, and I'm not going to dwell on this. It's just an opinion. I believe the most overrated nib or nibs are the following. Let me just demonstrate. Okay. Most overrated nibs. Yowo Bock nibs are, in my opinion, overrated. They're dominating the scene because of the pricing, I guess, and because you can buy them and brand them yourself. They're not expensive, so you're kind of we're stuck with them, so to speak. So I'm not even going to do a writing sample. I've done, my part one, I reviewed them all, but, they're just a boring, fairly stiff, good nib, but overrated in my view. Why are we getting so many pens with Yo-O nibs? I'm just fed up with them. In fact, I welcome the Yo-O elastic nib or flex nib. Gives me a little more softness and a little more variety. The next overrated nib, in my view, extremely overrated. Let me just go to my overhead. Unfortunately, is this Montblanc 149. Now, don't get me wrong. This nib is a nice nib. But why am I paying $1,200 for this pen? Canadian. That's what I mean by overrated. There are other gold nibs in-house with prettier pens that either match or beat this one. I just have to give you an example, and that's Pelican. So, in my view, if we're going to take a look at luxury pens, the most overrated luxury pen nib, in my view, is the Montblanc. Now, have no illusions, it's a good nib. I'm just saying that, is it really worth $1,200? I have my doubts. I never bought this pen. I never would have bought this pen. My wife was kind enough to give me this as a gift. And that's one of the reasons why I cherish it. Probably the only reason. But I find myself never using this pen for some reason. So there you have it. That's luxury pen. That to me is the most overrated. Now, the next choice I think is a little bit controversial, and it's really subjective, and it's just me. I think the most overrated nib of all time is the Lamy 2000. I cannot write with this thing. I just cannot write with it. I understand that the pen is, a genius of in terms of design, and it's it's simple. It's been around forever. You can't even see the piston and the material, but when I have people either love this pen or hate it. Let's see if I could write with it. Lamy 2000. Wow, I'm writing with it. Okay, there it is. It's skipping. It's like I have to really pay attention to the sweet spot. And it gets me nervous. I just, it's in my pen cases. It's going to be there forever. I never use it. Is it a good pen? Of course it is. Is it an iconic pen? Of course it is. Some people would say it's a grail pen. But for me, I think it's the most overrated pen because it doesn't give you, or give all of us, out of the box, a great writing experience. If I have to, look for the sweet spot when I write with a pen, I mean, what's the point? It costs me over $200. It shouldn't happen. So, as controversial as that may be, to me, the most overrated pen and overrated nib is this Lamy 2000. But that's Vincenzo. With his quirks, I think it's got something to do with how I hold my pen. Very subjective, but that's my view. And I know that when I mentioned that in previous recap, a lot of people agreed with my sentiment, and a lot of people disagreed. So it's kind of, that's why I say you either love it or hate it. There you have it. Now, what else have I got to talk to you about? Yeah, so that I think completes my, most underrated and overrated nibs. And what we're going to take a look at now, chapter 2, is the best starter nibs. What I propose is that we go to my overhead camera. I'm going to pull out the pens. We'll do some writing samples as I speak and as I give you my point of view. We'll be right back. Okay, best starter nibs. Well, I got 3. Sorry about the hands, by the way. Inky fingers. It's just part of the the nib video. I think it plays the role, right? I think I have 3 categories here. Now, the first series of pens that I think are let me just go to my overhead camera. The Lamy Safari or All-Star. I think these, they come in fine, medium, I think even extra fine, but I never know about extra fine because I just don't buy extra fine. But I think there certainly is fine, medium, broad, and then they have 1.1, 1.9, and they even have that italic cursive, I think, specialized nib. These nibs are just great. They're easy. The pen is cheap. If you're talking about a starter, so this is the Lamy steel, and this is the 1.1 stub. Very nice. 1.1 stub kind of gives you a very nice line variation. I have in this one a medium, I believe. So this is a Lamy steel medium. Just writes like a charm. And, in terms of swapping, those nibs are very easily swapped. You just pull them out, put one in. So as a starter nib and experimenting as a starter nib, I think these are number 1. And then I have another one here. They even come in kind of a dark black. And this again is another medium. These black nibs always have a tendency to write a little bit thinner. But there you have it. So Lamy is probably my number 1. Number 2 on my list, with a more conventional nib, are these Faber-Castell pens, the EXO and the Grip, I believe. The nibs on these things, they're number 5. They're small, but man, are they juicy. So this is Faber-Castell, number 5. Now, Castell, do I spell that with 2 L's or 1 L? 2 L's. So this, I think, is a number 5, and it's a medium. But take a look at how this nib writes. Not expensive. No fault, man. No fault. That's the Grip, and this is the EXO. This, I think, is the broad. It's so smooth. Now, I believe they make their own nibs. Sometimes I get the feeling they're Schmidt nibs, but I'm not sure. Maybe some of you will let me know. But these little Faber-Castell pens, my view, are that and Lamy are the top starter pens in my view. It's a sharp-looking pen from a good pen maker. been around, and you can get different colors. I think beautiful starter pens. So that to me is the two categories of pens, where you have one with a different type of nib but easily swappable, the other one more conventional nib. Both starter pens and starter nibs. No brainers in my view. But if we're going to talk about starter nibs, and if we're going to talk about, future collectors or enthusiasts, I think the Chinese nibs are perfect for starter nibs. And let me explain. They're not expensive. You can swap them, and you can, have fun with all the tools to be able to fine-tune a nib. What are those tools? Well, here they are. So if we're going to experiment with nibs and try to, swap them, you don't want an expensive nib. You want a nib that will, that won't cost you a lot of money, because if you ruin it, it's not the end of the world. So, we're talking about how to experiment with a nib. And do I have one here not too far away? Yeah, so we're back. So as I was saying, Chinese pens I think are the best because they're not expensive and you can play around with them, swap them, put them from one pen to another, learn how they work, learn how a feed works. As a beginner, I think they're perfect. And once you've experimented with those nibs, then you can move on to the next category of nibs, which I would say are, Bach, Schmidt, and Yowo, and you can experiment with those as well. Now, what kind of experimenting would we do? And of course, this is for the beginners. It's not for those who are already experts. I mean, I use two main tools, to fine-tune my nibs. I use this instead of using those thin sheets of which bend on you. I got this. I bought this on Amazon. You got like 0.1, 0.2, 0.25, 0.3. The meshes are really, 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 really thin. And what you do is, of course, you got to get that inside that nib, right? And you put it in there, and sorry for my hands, and you play around with it, and you try to loosen up that nib, and that's what we're doing. Now, you can do that to a Mont Blanc nib that costs, the pen costs you more than $1,000. I mean, that would be a disaster unless you really know what you're doing. So this is a cheap Jinao original nib. I can do almost anything to it. I don't care because it's worth pennies. And I play around with it and see what and I can put a small mesh in there. I can put a wider mesh. So this is the tool that I use. They're thickness gauge, and you can buy that on. I only use the first 3 or 4. Of course, I never get to the thicker ones, but that's what I use. And then in order to smoothen up my nibs, I have a series of. Here they are. They're a series of micro service, and different colors signify coarse down to fine. So depending on how much I need to smoothen out my nibs, I use these. Now, you put an expensive nib and you start grinding it on one of these things, you might regret it. So starting out and with a cheap Chinese nib, I think is fabulous. So part of the game, swapping, grinding, fine-tuning, I think it's a lot of fun if we do it with the tools that I showed you, but with cheaper type nibs. Now, what else have I had to say about starter nibs? Okay, I think that's essentially it for starter nibs. Next chapter is the best number 5 nibs. I'm going to gather them, put them in front of you, and give you my point of view. Be right back. Okay, best number 5 sized pens in my inventory. I will leave the best one for the end. The others are pretty equivalent. They're not in any particular order. But I do want to mention that. Let's go to my overhead camera and I'll show you what my picks are. I have the Kaweco. I have the Schmidt, which you just saw, but a Schmidt number 5 and a different pen in a Scrivener pen. I have that number 5 nib in that Faber-Castell that we just saw. We have a surprise nib in this one, which is my best one, but I'll tell you in a second. We have the Pilot Metropolitan, and we have the Ongdian M2? Yeah, M2 with a lemon nib. Why don't we start with the Ongdian? This Ongdian I purchased with a lemon nib. So let me just get closer so you can appreciate the writing sample. So this is the lemon. Sorry about that, that's me. Number 5 steel. And I would say that this is a medium. Although sometimes I wonder if it's fine. That's one of the things they don't. Do they mention it? Yeah, no, they don't. Lemon don't put their, most of the time don't put their, very nice nib. Little stiff, I would say to you, but affordable and very nice, and in the Chinese nib category, if you will. So that's that. Then I have my Pilot Metropolitan, which is, a staple pen. Some would argue that this may also be a good starter nib. You can get them in extra fine, fine, medium, and I have it even stub. This is the stub. So we can even add this to best starter. And this is a stub. Very nice. So that's the Pilot Metropolitan. We will skip that one. Of course, we saw the Faber-Castell. Just spectacular. Very nice. The next one is the Schmidt number 5, which we've seen, but this is in a different pen. Wow. This nib just makes it so much fun to write with. What a good choice by Scrivener. So that's that. Let me just move this up even further. We got my Kaweco. Beautiful. Just a really juicy number 5. One of my favorites. But my favorite number 5 nib, and now I'm going to surprise somebody, and somebody's going to say, well, you're contradicting yourself, Vincent. Well, not really. Number 5, the best number 5 nib, in my opinion, is this little 1.4 Edison Yowo nib. It's a 1.4 stub. It's a Yowo nib branded Edison and tuned by Edison. Okay, purchased on the Edison inventory listing, and here it is. This is the Yowo number 5 steel. stub. Branded Edison. Look at this, folks. Is that nice? Yeah. Line variation, stub. One of my early, love affairs, as you know, were with stubs, nibs, and this was one of my favorite and has remained to this day. If I have to, rely on a number 5 nib for whatever reason, and I can swap it, I have many of these 1.4 Edison nibs. That's what I would go for. So there you have just a sampling of what I believe are my favorite number 5 size nibs. Are there any in gold? Don't have any, and none come to mind other than this one. Just give me a second. My favorite number 5 gold nib, but the only one I have, is in this Parker Duofold Mini. And there it is. It's a nice little juicy little nib. This one I believe is a medium. A problem with this nib, and I can never get to use it, is it doesn't have a converter. I haven't been able to find one that fits in here. And let me know, guys, if you know one. So I have to use these kind of cartridges, and look, the ink stays up and doesn't come down. I hate cartridges. It's like, water and oil with cartridges for me anyway. It's always hit and miss. It never works, which is too bad, because every time I go to pick up this pen to write with, it never writes, and I got to prime it, etc., etc. But yeah, so are there any other golds? I don't believe I have any other gold number 5 nibs, unless I'm mistaken. This is probably the only one, unless you talk about hooded nibs and the rest of it, but that's in a different category. So there you have it. That completes the chapter. And folks, it completes part 3. I hope that was informative, entertaining, and you know what? Had a little beverage, sat back, listened to Vincenzo speak, give you some opinions. It's not that bad. I hope it wasn't anyway. If you like this video, please let me know. If you don't like it, please let me know. Be kind, but let me know. And please subscribe. I need subscribers. I wanna try to get to that 6,000 mark pretty soon. So let's do it, folks. Let's do it, folks. It helps the algorithm and it helps my channel. Grazie molto. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for part 4. And yes, part 5 is going to end it all. It's going to be added, and that's going to be a date with Joshua Lax and Nibmeister, and we're going to deal with everything that we need to know about Nibmeistering with Joshua. So thank you very much. Stay tuned. Be well. Enjoy your pens.